Hello again, football fans, and welcome back to the RFL Draft Preview. This is the Louisville Lumberjacks edition. A surprising ending to the season 9 for the Louisville Lumberjacks. I think just like we talked about the Cincinnati Hogs, the Louisville Lumberjacks overachieved a little bit. The emergence of Jordan Granger at the quarterback position was something that I don't think we anticipated to happen this quickly. I can even go back to my own thoughts earlier on before the season even started. And I certainly did not envision a scenario where Jordan Granger was going to have the year that he did. Regardless, he did. He kind of shut up a lot of the naysayers, proved me wrong. And so the Louisville Lumberjacks find themselves, I guess, in a little bit of a less than advantageous position because, again, they didn't make a huge run into the postseason and have a shot at winning the Relo Bowl, but they did improve quite a bit. And so the problem with that is you don't find yourself with a real early draft pick, and you didn't really get, all the flowers and all the notoriety that you would like to by getting to the Relo Bowl or potentially making that really deep run. So when we take a quick peek at the Louisville Lumberjacks and what their draft capital situation looks like here, they've got 6 total picks in the draft, right? But their first pick in the draft isn't until the back half of the second round. And so when you look at the Lumberjacks roster and where their needs might fall, you're really looking at pick 220 and 329 as potential spots where they can address active current needs right now. And so let's go ahead and take a peek at what the Lumberjacks are working with, what their roster looks like, what their free agent situation is going to be like, that they're going to have to navigate throughout the season, because again, that's a big deal. As we look at the draft and what they might address and the positions that they need to address. So when we look at the Lumberjacks here, let's just go straight down to upcoming free agents. When I look at the upcoming free agents, obviously big red flag, Sheldon Reinhardt, X Factor corner, but he's in a walk year. And then you've got a couple guys on the offensive line here. So you've got a Zach Ballantyne, you've got Jacob Sprinsky, and then you've also got Kareem Stone. So you've got 3 guys right there on the offensive line alone. And now if you're looking to build a perennial, I don't want to say powerhouse, but a perennial playoff team, you really want to, especially if you have a young quarterback, you really want to surround him with a good offensive line and some good playmakers, whether that is a stud running back. Ideally, it's a couple really good wide receivers, a really good tight end, someone to kind of take the load away from Jordan Granger a little bit, right? You want him to have those playmakers, but you also need him to have protection. So when you look at the offensive line, you've got 3 guys there on the offensive line that are going to be potential free agents at the end of the year. And then you've also got Drew Blaze. So let's go ahead. Here's the upcoming free agents. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual depth chart and what that looks like. So on the offensive line, let's start there. We talked about Zach Ballantyne, right? He's 32 years old. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Are you going to re-sign a 32-year-old? And even if you entertain the idea of re-signing a 32-year-old, what does the regression look like? Is it so great that 89 now goes down to like an 82 or an 83? Probably not that far. But if you do re-sign him for 1 year, he's probably regressing down to an 85 or 86, which is certainly good. But it also begs the question, would you like to address that potential replacement in this draft so that you have 1 season to develop that player so that at the end of this year, when Zach Ballantyne does walk or regress or retire, you've had a year to develop his replacement. So now you're not starting a rookie that you drafted in season 11 draft as a 72 or 73 overall. Maybe you're starting someone that is a 74 or 75 overall that you had a year to develop, right? So that's one area that they could go. We also talked about Jacob Sprinsky. He's 25 years old and he's an 82. So I would think that Sprinsky's probably somewhat of a priority, right? If I were the GM of the Lumberjacks, I'm looking at Sprinsky as someone that I want to bring back. I don't know what the cost is going to be, right? And again, that's something that they're going to have to navigate throughout the season. But I think Sprinsky has got to be, if not priority number one, he's certainly got to be a top priority for the Lumberjacks to try to bring that guy back. And then you've got just some other guys in here. Kareem Stone, we talked about, another potential free agent at the end of the year. He's 30 years old. He's a 77 overall. Will regression kick in now? Do you want to bring that guy back? So a lot of questions, I think, for the Lumberjacks on the offensive line. And I think that's really where I would stick here because, again, you don't have a first-round pick. And as much as I said early on, yeah, I would love to have some playmakers to surround Jordan Granger. I also want to be able to build a sustainable offensive line for the future. And Zach Ballantyne is not that guy. Kareem Stone is not that guy. Osia Okorafor is 28 years old. He's probably that guy for another 2 years, maybe 3 years. But at 28 years old, he's an 84 overall. He kind of is what he is, right? He's not going to get up to a 90 overall, right? You're kind of looking at Okorafor as, an 85, 86 overall, and that's kind of like the best he's ever going to get to. And so if you're picking with the 20th pick in the second round, I think offensive line, if it were me, is probably the direction that I would go. Now, if you don't want to go offensive line, then okay, let's make an argument. We could look at the defensive line, right? And so you've got Chase Schilling, X Factor, 91 overall, but he's 30 years old, right? So after that, you've got Taven Byers, you've got Derek Hatcher, you've got Tyreek Allen. Those guys are developing and they are young. So while, yes, there is quite a bit of a gap from Schilling to Hatcher in terms of the edge rushers, I do feel like Hatcher and Allen are developmental guys that are only going to get better. And so if you draft a defensive lineman, which I'm okay with if that's what the Lumberjacks decide to do, if they do decide to go edge rusher, my only concern is, again, with the 20th pick in the second round, what are you getting at edge rusher? Because chances are that edge rusher that you're getting at 220 is probably the equivalent of what Tyreek Allen is, or maybe best case scenario, what Derek Hatcher is already. And so if you're drafting at 220 and it's the first player you're drafting in this draft class and you're trying to address needs and you want to get guys that can contribute now, I don't know that an edge rusher at 220 is going to contribute right now, right? Because again, you've got Chase Schilling, you've got Derek Hatcher. And chances are with a late pick in the second round, best case scenario is you're getting a 74 overall. It's not that often that you see 74, 75 overall guys going late second, early third round, right? And so if you do, you consider yourself lucky. You got a pretty good deal. You got a steal there. But again, is that guy going to come in and replace the playing time and replace the snaps that Derek Hatcher is giving you? I don't know. Right? I mean, obviously scheme and playbook and all that will play a factor and play a role. And so for my money, yes, I could see and I could envision a scenario where the Lumberjacks want to go defensive line. I just don't know if that's the priority. Like if I'm running the team, I think that the offensive line is a little bit more important, right? than the defensive line at this particular point and during this draft. And then from there, you look at the linebackers. Like I love the linebacker situation with the Lumberjacks. Tim Pennington is a monster, and then Garrett Evans. I mean, the future. I mean, just so much untapped potential for Garrett Evans there in Louisville. And then even Justin Yarin, right? Like 27, but he's still a very good, a very good linebacker 3. So I don't know that the Lumberjacks would necessarily want to go linebacker here. Again, you could, if you're worried about the future, maybe you want to address the offensive line or you want to address the defensive line via the trade market. All right, well then, if you're going to go that route, then maybe you entertain the idea of trading somebody like a Justin Yarin, or maybe moving somebody. I can't imagine that Garrett Evans' name would ever be mentioned in trade talks. Certainly, Tim Pennington is not going to go anywhere. The only way that I would see Tim Pennington being moved is if something happened to the Lumberjacks and they were just completely, not going anywhere. If they just fell off a cliff and they were not, they had no chance at a division, no chance at the playoffs, and they wanted to move them to just maximize the return. But again, that just doesn't really seem feasible or possible for me. And then if you look at the secondary here, the secondary is, you've got McAnally, who's a 96 overall, and he's only 25 years old. And then you got the other safety position. You got Robert Ivory, who's already hit the 80 threshold, and he's 23 years old. And then you've got a 93 and an 82 in Reinhardt and Corrigan. So the secondary, I don't think you really have any big needs. And so, you look at all that. And then the only other place that I might entertain is wide receiver. And I know you're looking at these wide receivers and you're probably thinking, well, why? You've got an 85 in John Johnson. You've got an 83 in McClellan, Larry Cruz, Drew Blaze. Drew Blaze is a potential free agent at the end of the year. Remember, you saw that earlier on in the video. And while I fully expect the Lumberjacks to re-sign Drew Blaze, I could also, given the draft class and given where they are picking, I could see them looking to take a wide receiver because, again, John Johnson, for as good as he might be for the squad, he's only got 87 speed. He's clearly regressing. He's 32 years old. And if you go into the future, you re-sign Drew Blaze and you don't address any wide receivers in this draft, then basically you're going into next season, not season 10, but you're going into season 11 where Drew Blaze is your number one wide receiver. And that's quite a big drop off from what they've had in years past. And so given the draft class and where they are selecting, I think you could also see them going wide receiver in this class. And so the three positions that I'm really looking at for the Lumberjacks in terms of, I think they have to draft players in these positions during this draft. Now, again, they have 6 picks. So if they wanted to go wide receiver, I'm not saying they have to go wide receiver at 220. I'm not even saying they have to go wide receiver at 329. But at some point in this draft, I would be shocked if they did not select a wide receiver. Same thing goes for the offensive line, and same thing goes for the defensive line, whether they wanted to go tackle or whether they wanted to go edge rusher. I think those 3 positions should and will get addressed throughout this draft during those 6 picks. And so let's now finally go and take a look at the prospects, right? And again, just to remind you guys that the prospect list that I'm going off of here, this is all from Pecan. You guys know Pecan is, neck deep in all things college. So he kind of puts together, his thoughts. Again, this is not RFL official. This is not Chris Dunn official. This is not Commissioner Smitty official. This is simply a list of guys that are available to be drafted and how Pecan has ranked them based on his opinion, right? So you look at the edge rushers. All right. Now remember, this is where I would probably say the Lumberjacks have the biggest priority. But at 220, Nick O'Quinn's not going to be there, right? And so if you're looking edge rushing linebacker, well, you got a Hassan Bird, Tyrese Evans, Rondell Smith, Raheem Underwood. Like, depending on how you rank those guys, I think that there's a chance that at 220, you could get one of those guys. Maybe you're not going to get the second one off the board. I think we're probably going to see 2 or 3 edge rushing linebackers taken in the first 45 or 50 picks. So that would probably take the Lumberjacks out of that market. But maybe one of them falls, or maybe they've got somebody like a Duke Cushing or a Rondell Smith higher than what you're seeing on this list. And if Hassan Bird happens to be the second edge rusher taken, Raheem Underwood goes third, but maybe the Lumberjacks have Rondell Smith or Duke Cushing as their number 2. Well, then great. He kind of falls into their lap. You could certainly see a scenario where that would happen. But maybe they don't want to go, true linebacker edge rusher, and they want more of that traditional defensive line edge rusher. Well, then certainly you've got a handful of guys here too. And again, names like Ethan Marks, names like Manny Rojas, those guys are going to be gone. I would even go so far as to say that Russell Shackelford is probably gone. And then possibly even Randy Wilson. Well, like Randy Wilson had a phenomenal year in CS7, right? I believe he was defensive lineman, defensive end of the year, runner up. Maybe Wyatt Harris was 2 and Wilson was 1, or Wilson was 2 and Wyatt Harris was 1. But Randy Wilson had a phenomenal CS7. He had a fantastic CS8. Was on a weekly basis up there in terms of award recipients. Sina Anoa'i, we talked about him a little bit. Will Wolford. All these guys are possibles at 220, right? And so again, it just kind of depends on where the Lumberjacks have these guys ranked. Maybe they like Sina Anoa'i better than Russell Shackelford. Well, if you do, and Sina's available with that 20th pick in the second round, to you as the GM of the Lumberjacks, maybe that is who you would consider to be the number 3 defensive end. And if you can get your number 3 defensive end, and he's going after Shackelford, Wilson, Wolford, Rubin, whoever, that's a win for you, right? So I could envision a scenario where one of those guys likely end up in Louisville. And then you've also got the offensive line. So the offensive line, there's a lot of different places you could go. I don't know what the market's going to be on centers, right? Like there are some teams out there that really need a center. So a guy like a Rico Cardoza, a guy like a Todd Sutton, those might be names that you see called in the first round, but they might also be names that you see called in the beginning to middle of the second round, right? It really just depends on who those teams are out there that need a center and want a center and are going to keep a guy at that position, right? Because a lot of times we see teams go after a guard and move him to center. So depending on how you feel about a Rico Cardoza, a Todd Sutton, a Dallas Stein versus some of the guards, maybe you want to take a guard and move him over to center. And so maybe you're not even looking at actual true centers. You're looking at guards. All that remains to be seen, but I could see them going offensive line. Any number of guys could be available at 220. The only names that I would throw out there that are probably not going to be available at 220, Casey Chestnut, probably gone. Caesar Davis, probably gone. Joshua Thompson, Javier Valero, Connor Griggs, like those guys are probably fringe. I think of those 3, between Thompson, Valero, and Griggs. I'd say one of them is definitely also gone. Maybe two of them, maybe all three of them. Maybe we see 5 guards taken in the top 50. And then if you look at the tackle position, I think Cody Nelson, Greg Dunham, Chuck Bynum, Trip Zimmer, Brett Sloan, like these are all names, Anthony Moore, Sonny Daniels, Craig Pryor, Trip Zimmer from Ohio State. Depending on how you have these guys ranked, we could see 3, 4, or 5 offensive tackles taken in the top 50 picks as well. And again, at 220, the Lumberjacks don't pick until that 52nd pick, right? So the 20th pick in the second round is pick 52, right? So at 52. So at pick 52, are we going to see 5 offensive tackles taken ahead of them? It's possible, right? And so that's kind of how the offensive line market looks for them. And then if you look at the wide receivers, just real quick, because I do think that this is an area where they could go. And you might not think they need to, but again, Dior Gore is the consensus number 1 wideout, and many think that Steve McCaskill is number 2. But after that, I think there's 5 or 6 names here that you could, in your mind, make the argument that that is your wide receiver 3. And so maybe that's Trevon Simpson at Clemson. Maybe that's Jamie LaRue at LSU. Maybe you like Rohan Boxey because he's a user, right? Like you could make an argument that from wide receiver 3 all the way down to like wide receiver 9. Again, I'm just going off of Pecan's list here. You could make an argument that this particular guy, Talon Ross, this particular guy, Mamadou Sanyalu, is your next best after Dior Gore and Steve McCaskill. And so if that's the case, and the Lumberjacks are looking at a situation where they find that their wide receiver 3, the wide receiver that they have as number 3 on their draft board, is available at the 20th pick in the second round, then I think they could easily make that move, especially if there are other wide receivers that have gone. Let's hypothetically say that the Louisville Lumberjacks have Talon Ross as their 3rd wide receiver in this class. Well, if Dior Gore is gone, McCaskill, Simpson, and Sanyalu are all gone, and the Lumberjacks are on the board at 220, and they're looking at the 5th wide receiver off the board, but that 5th wide receiver off the board is their number 3 on their board, then yes, I could absolutely see them making that leap and going and getting their guy, right? In the draft, it's all about getting your guy. It's not about getting who Pecan thinks is the 3rd best wide receiver. It's about getting your guy, who you think is the best wide receiver. What are you looking for in a wide receiver? Is it speed? Is it catching? Is it touchdowns in college, yards in college? Is it height? Is it weight? Is it years experience? Whatever it might be, it's about getting your guy. So offensive line, defensive line, and yes, wide receiver, all positions that I think the Louisville Lumberjacks could go in this draft. Again, they have 6 picks total. Their first one is not until later in the second round. So we'll see what they do. But the Louisville Lumberjacks certainly looking to address probably one of, if not all of those 3 positions that I just named there. So I thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the Louisville Lumberjacks RFL draft preview. Again, the draft will kick off on Friday night. I believe the time is still TBD. It is 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock. Not quite sure when that will be. The first round will be on Friday. Saturday will be rounds 2 and 3. And then Sunday will be rounds 4 through 7. So again, thanks for tuning in. I will have more of these team previews coming at you throughout the day today. So until next time, take care, everybody.